We have a new clubhouse leader. A giant win for Geelong. They roll the reigning champs and seize top spot. By 2 points at quarter time, 4 at the half, 12 at three-quarter time. They kicked 4-7 to 2-3 in that final term to power away to a 28-point win, which moves them to the top of the table, ahead of the D's on percentage, with 6 to play.
We are Geelong, the greatest team of all. We are Geelong, we're always on the ball. We play the game as it should be played, at home or far away. Our banners fly high from dawn to dark, down at Gardenia Park.
In front of the 2011 Premiership champions, of which Joel Selwood was a part, and here he is with Abs.
Congratulations, Skip. You finally get a win against that dominant D's side, and I'm sure it tastes pretty bloody good, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, we'll let it sink in a little bit later, but it's obviously a really special night for us with Isaac playing his 250th, and we want to make ourselves known for winning those games, so really special.
You played against them 3 times last year and couldn't get it done, but where was the difference for you tonight?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we've been playing well of late. I mean, we've still left a lot out there tonight, 12-19, so, you know, we sort of prepared ourselves really well for this period, and, you know, we're running on top of the ground at the moment, which helps.
9 individual goal kickers. Jezza held goalless. He did a mountain of work up the ground, yes, and Hawke only popped up late, so it must be really pleasing to have an even contribution across the board. Yeah,
it was. I mean, our kids are growing so quick. Max and Sam again. You know, Grime played a key role down in our forward line on Lever with Brad Close. You know, there's just, you know, guys contributing all over the ground. It's really special.
You're going to sneak up and have a drink with the boys with the 2011 Premiership after this one?
I'm not sure where they are, but it makes tonight a little bit easier anyway, so it'd be good to see a lot of them.
And you did touch on Izzy and, you know, 250 for him. He's had an amazing career, obviously, across Hawthorn and the Cats, but how impressive has he been since crossing over?
Yeah, I mean, he was a nightmare to play against, so it was really hard to get here. We got him here, and he's been so good for our group. And I'm about to miss him getting chaired off, so I'm going to run over.
Start running over. Thanks, Joel.
All smiles for Isaac Smith in game number 250. His Cats go top of the ladder with their 7th win in a row. They turn the tables from last year's preliminary final and round 23 wins. And it's a significant win for Geelong, but it's also a really important win for the state of the competition and the race for the flag, Geordie.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't come easy. It took until probably the 6-minute mark of the 4th term to really break the game open. So as we go back to the game and see Isaac Smith chaired off after his 250. It's always nice to have a victory in a milestone game. It just, as Joel Selwood said, it means the frothies taste a little bit nicer post-game.
You don't mind drawing that straw either if you've got to carry Izzy off.
No,
he doesn't weigh much.
I actually have written down here, I wonder what he weighed when he got drafted to what he weighs now. There wouldn't have been too much weight that he's put on. But fantastic career, and he's just gone down to Geelong. I think when he was making that decision, where do I go to try and get one more premiership, and he's chosen Geelong.
Love the sportsmanship too there with Goody and also Max Gawn shaking hands saying well done mate on 250. Fantastic stuff.
A brilliant win by the Cats. I mean, 12 goals, 19. The expected score was so much higher for the Cats. They did it the hard way. It was an error-riddled game right across the board. But their ability to win the football, Jace, at the end of the day will be what everyone's talking about out of this contest.
Yeah, that's what it came down to. I mean, it wasn't the game we were looking for with 1v2. We were hoping for a pretty high-scoring contest. It became a slog. and one team stood up, Kingy, and won that slog, and they deserved to win it because they just looked better the longer the game went.
They were incredibly tough. I take my hat off to the Cats.
Yeah.
Their midfield was unbelievable tonight. Patrick Dangerfield's a superstar in that role, and we've been waiting for him to come back and see where he's at with his football, but tonight he made a statement. I mean, he had some support. Guthrie, Selwood at times, Atkins most of the night.
Yep.
They were awesome with their contested footy and their clearance game. They haven't had a smashing like that, Melbourne, for 5 years. Plus 22 clearances to the Cats. And it's not so much the damage that come on the scoreboard from there, it's the territory. And then they get their gridlock defence going and the pressure's off their back six. They can position where they want to position, Geordie, and the whole game looks like a Geelong game.
Yeah, and I think the game management with Selwood and Dangerfield, quite often we'd see at the start of the first quarter, second quarter, they'd start on the bench. So to manage them through the early part of quarters, the early part of game, which I think gave them more energy when the whips were cracking late in quarters.
He played the fewest minutes of anyone tonight, Joel Selwood.
We started every quarter on the bench.
Yeah, so there's a tactic there, isn't there? There's a program to get him to the end in good health.
Which isn't always easy to stick to. When you're playing a game that you're desperate to win, you want your best players out there, but to have the discipline to keep them on the bench for those periods really worked.
All right, let's have a look at the quarter four highlights, which saw, well, Christian Petrarca's goal cut the margin to 7 points.
Yep.
And then Cam Guthrie with a centre-bounce clearance and then a goal. Got the ball rolling for the Cats to really put the foot down.
Yeah, we all thought when Petrarca kicked the goal, here come Melbourne. They've got momentum, but it was quickly wrested back. And this guy is a beautiful kick on the run, Cam Guthrie. He works hard. He's one of those quality midfielders that I think doesn't get the kudos he deserves because he plays like this week in, week out.
Yeah, super reliable. And I think that's what we saw tonight. Even the stars that didn't have a good game, they just weren't reliable in those really important situations. Cam Guthrie was that player, but you're right. Melbourne got back within 6 points and we thought, hold on, we've got a game here. And then it was the Geelong side that took over. And every time Melbourne tried to come out of their defensive end, Geelong's pressure just built so many more opportunities to go back inside and score, at least on that occasion.
I think Chris Scott has found the perfect role for Mitch Duncan. That sweeping roll across half-back, and then he can slingshot forward. He had a couple of shots at goal tonight. He flushed them both. I think he had 3 shots at goal, actually. But he just goes to the right areas at the right times, playing that sort of centre-back role with a licence.
Once they lost that territory battle, though, Louis, there were concerns about the way Melbourne were trying to bring the ball out of defence?
It was predictable. I mean, you could nearly pencil in if they got the ball in the back left pocket, they were always going long down the line. It wasn't until the last minute and a half that we saw them switch the ball and try and use the angles and play the game and use the whole ground. They didn't do that all game. So, yes, we can sit here and say Geelong's pressure was great, which it was, but Melbourne always brought the ball back into a contested situation coming out of their back half, which actually suited Geelong tonight.
You were critical of the way the D's were moving the ball a few weeks back when they had that slump. Do you think they've reverted?
Well, I think so. I think if you're out on the ground and you want to have a bit of a feel on how the patterns and the flow of the game's working, so if you don't feel that you want it to come from the coach's box, but you could quite clearly see the pressure was mounting from Geelong and they were stacking their numbers on the skinny side near the bench. Yet Melbourne didn't use the other side of the ground. So they played into Geelong's hands a little bit. But then on the back of that, Geelong have got to position themselves to make them pay and score coming back inside forward 50, which they did. But, yeah, you'd like to see a little bit more of an exploring type of mindset coming out of the back half.
Tactically brilliant tonight. So Chris Scott said, let's go around Max Gawn. Let's not kick it to Max Gawn. Max has 0 intercept marks for the day, 1 intercept disposal for the game. That's not Max. All year he's taken at least 1 intercept mark. He's been a roadblock in between the arcs, that wing point where the whole game comes to a standstill as to whether you can contested mark or not. Although Chris Scott had a fantastic night in the box.
Well, let's head inside the room. 7 in a row for the Cats as they make a charge towards September and they take the massive scalp of the reigning premiers. And Jason Dunstall, only 1 goal in the dynamic duo of Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins, so that makes this result even more impressive.
Oh, it does, absolutely. I mean, they weren't regulation goals. Mind you, the whole game wasn't a regulation game. It was very contested. It was very messy. Lots of fumbles, lots of turnovers. But they just found ways to actually create a goal out of nothing when they did go forward, and they had players running into space. So what they had was a lot more options in their forward 50 as opposed to Melbourne, who looked a little bit one-dimensional going to Ben Brown. A couple of times they got out the back, but that was about it.
Yeah, I think it goes on the back of what Kingy was saying. Tactically around stoppages, they had a win. I think tactically Geelong, forward of the ball, had a win. How many times did you see May have an influence on the game or Lever have an influence on the game? They were always engaged by either Hawkins or Cameron. So, yes, they didn't get the space and the reward for goals, but certainly in that last 10 minutes, I mean, a couple of really important touches from Hawkins, that one through the legs and a couple of those little crafty things forward of the ball. But they engaged the Melbourne defence, which went a long way to winning the game.
All right, we're going to head to the rooms to talk to one of our favourites here at Fox Footy. It is the milestone man, Isaac Smith. Izzy, thank you for joining us tonight. You kicked a goal, you got the win, you're top of the table. Sounds like a pretty perfect night at the office in a milestone game.
Yeah, Sarah, it was a great win. 1v2, I think it had been built up the last 3 or 4 days as the biggest game of the year. And oh, sorry, I'm not even looking at the camera.
Here we are, mate.
I'm looking at the TV at myself, just admiring. No, it was built up as a big game, and I think both teams delivered, and we were lucky enough to get the 4 points. But I know Melbourne will be going home, and they'll be studying that tape, and they'll be looking at it and seeing what they can do in September, because I'm sure we'll both meet.
Used to be one of my favourites, Sarah, not anymore. Smithy, just want to have a chat about the build-up to this one, mate. Congratulations on knocking over 250. But given what was at stake tonight, what was the focus for you guys all week?
I think, Bung, we just wanted to play our game, and what we worked on over summer. It sounds a bit silly, but we have changed a few things, and we're going forward. We've got 2 pretty potent key forwards there, and Tyson Stengel, Brad Close, Graham Myers are pretty dangerous at their feet as well. So we just wanted to get the ball in there. It sounds silly. It's pretty simple, and just attack the game and see if we could put their defence under some pressure, because they are a really good defence and we know that. But we're able to get the job done tonight.
Congratulations on 250. Isaac, let us in a little bit on the tactics of the night. Was it by design that you tried to avoid Max Gawn at all costs, particularly long down the line?
Not really, Kingy. We knew if we could get there and get our contest set up well, then we'd be in a good position to bring it to ground. But he is one of the best big men in the competition, as he likes to tell me when we're having a quiet beer. So it's, yeah, you know, you don't want to be kicking it to him. He absolutely dominated us in that prelim last year. So we'd be silly to sit it on his head.
Smithy, congratulations on 250. Mate, your career's been marvellous. I'm just thinking about your weight. Your weight when you got drafted, in terms of your weight right now, have you put on any?
I actually think I've lost some in the last few weeks, Louis. With a 4-week-old baby, I'm getting bugger all sleep and actually not eating that much. So I'll try and bulk up for you for September and get these pipes going. What do you reckon? Good
boy. I think you need a bit of work on that, mate. Just, I suppose there's been a little bit more game style related to Geelong and more their offensive flair through half-back and from defensive 50. You've been a big part of that. Has that been a shift that you've seen this year playing down there?
Yeah, it certainly was. The game was probably a little bit different a couple of years ago, but what Melbourne brought to the table probably really made teams rethink how they were playing the game, and it certainly made us rethink. And we've done a few personnel changes and mixed a few things around, but also changed a few tactics. And I'm not, to be honest, you know me, Louis, I'm not a stats man, but but I'm sure the stats are positive for us at the moment.
Now, Smithy, you've always been a coach's favourite. Clarko loved you for a long time, and it seems now that Chris Scott's very quickly adopted you. How is the dynamic of that relationship as opposed to the one you had with your previous coach?
Well, it's funny, Bung. Once they become senior coaches, most players get scared of going up and talking to them and taking the mickey out of them. But as soon as I walked in the doors at Geelong, I thought, oh, he's a good target. Takes himself pretty seriously. So, no, he leaves himself wide open.
Izzy, you spoke about having a new bubs in the house and not getting much sleep. You had a beautiful moment with your daughter Isla and able to go through the banner before the game. You've obviously played in premierships at the Hawks and had a lot of really big moments, but how special was that as a dad to share that with your little one?
To be honest, Sarah, as a player, yeah, these games I'm sure in the future will mean a hell of a lot, but to your family and your friends and your coaches and staff and all that have helped you along the way, that's where it means the most. But to be able to go out with Isla, kick the footy, run around, throw her in the air, it's probably my most special moment I've had in the game. So, yeah, I'll treasure that for a long time.
Isaac, we've been watching Patrick Dangerfield really closely to see where he's at and whether the absolute power is back. He looked terrific again tonight. What have you seen over the previous few weeks that's brought him to this point?
He's worked very hard, Kingy. We've got a heat room down here and he's been sent in there for a few sessions. Louis talks about me trying to put on weight. Paddy has no trouble doing that, so little whack in the ribs. But no, I think the club have been really smart, not just with him, but with other players this year, and we've certainly put ourselves in a position to be able to manage players and not bring them in when they're sort of half done or a little bit underdone. So we got Paddy fully fit, and I think the competition would love to see a fully fit Patrick Dangerfield in September.
Yeah, absolutely they would. You've been involved in successful premiership campaigns, so you know what the build-up feels like as the year goes on. Now that you've got 7 in a row under your belt with the Cats and you're building towards the back end, is that feeling familiar?
It is, Bung. I was saying that to someone during the week, that it feels like the momentum we're building feels like, you know, you got to get into September and all the luck's got to go your way. But it feels like we're building a real optimism around the club, and people are feeling really good. And as Louis would know, when I was at Hawthorn, when you get a good stock of young guys come through and really influencing the team, they bring the energy, and hats off to those boys at the moment, because that's where we've really improved.
Isaac, you bring the energy. We love talking to you on Fox Footy. Well done on the milestone and the win, and we look forward to catching up with you in the run home to September.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Well done, mate.
And Smithy, still dead to me.
Oh.
You can't do that and not give him the right to reply.
That was the only time to do it. Have a look at him. He's having a laugh.
You can't say that when you nominate him as your player that you invest in for the entire night.
Of course I can.
He kicked a
He
goal.
got some rough feedback early, didn't he?
Well, he did. He was a bit slow to start tonight, Kingy, but he got up and running and played a really good one in his 250.
Well, poor form, all of us, because none of us had our KFC player of the match, who is Patrick Dangerfield. A little wayward in front of goal, but in the things that matter around the contest over King, he was brilliant.
Oh, he set the tone, didn't he? We're talking about Melbourne coming out the front of stoppage, front door demons, and he was the one that stood there, played with physicality. He's prepared to mix it. I love his power to either make ground to get involved in the contest or to break away. You can't tackle him.
And what set him aside from the other players on the ground, Kingy, it wasn't what he was doing around the ground, it was his stoppage work.
Yeah, it was. He had 9 clearances, 14 contested possession. But when you look through the Geelong team, they really shared it. Guthrie 6 clearances, Selwood 7, Atkins 9. Well, Atkins is fast becoming a front liner, and he's probably only played 65% of game time tonight. So they'll be thrilled with this. No Tom Stewart, no Kolajasny, and no Parfitt. So they've got some stars to come back to put some selection pressure on, and they've just beaten the title holder.
Yeah, I think the Melbourne midfielders got lost in a way because of the Blixarves going to either Petrarca or Oliver. That's where their attention lies. So quite often you'd see the stoppages and Paddy Dangerfield would be free, get the clearance and then break from the clearance and have a really dominant game. I mean, this would have been a fantastic kick if it had gone in. So he gave himself opportunity to get the ball in tight and in congestion, but then also gave himself opportunity to hit the scoreboard.
You mentioned Blitzarves. With thanks to Zero, he is our Zero Lab player that we're going to have a look at now, Kingy, because, well, you can throw him anywhere and throw him on anyone, and he does a job against the biggest stars in the comp.
Well, so this is his night tonight. He's played almost 90% ground time, so he's been involved in 25 ruck contests. I'd hate to be a ruckman. I mean, this would be so sapping. But when he was in there, his midfield won the clearances 17-4. 3 goals, 2-0. And when he rested from ruck, he was asked to go and tag Petrarca. And then he rested from Petrarca, he was asked to go and tag Oliver. That's his night. He had the ace, king and queen of the Melbourne Footy Club up against him all night and was absolutely splendid. He's a unicorn. We don't see players like him with the versatility that he's got. What a luxury.
Yeah, he's a player that I think needs to be around the ball. And you're right, he's got the height and strength to match up on those two players, but also go into the ruck, but also that explosive aerobic capacity to get out and challenge these other midfielders.
And the development of De Koning this year has really given Chris Scott the opportunity to play blitz halves where he needs him a bit more.
Well, Jace, you touched on that in the pre-game. The pieces have come together really well for Chris Scott this year. I know they've changed the way they play, but I think the individuals have all taken small steps to be better. They've had to get better. I mean, let's be honest, the gap over the last couple of campaigns has been significant. So they're looking for a couple of goals, and I think they've found them.
So we know Bailey Fritsch is a star in front of goals and often nails his opportunities. But tonight there was one example where the Demons were making a bit of a charge and he pulled the wrong rein. He went for the wrong decision and it was costly.
It is, and the vision shows it very, very clearly. When you've got options in the middle, you have to take them. So the ball comes in, it ends up in his hands. Oh, that's not the one. That's not the one we were thinking of. But there was an option there where he had the square up to Ed Langdon in the middle, and he chose to go a dribble kick on his own. And it was a really bad one because it's off the back of what he did 2 or 3 weeks ago when he torched Petrarca with that hand pass running into an open goal and got tackled himself. So it's almost like, well, he hasn't learned, or they haven't addressed it, or they haven't quite got themselves back on track yet from that totally selfless approach that you need, I think, if you're going to be the best team going around.
Does it worry you?
It worries me.
Tonight?
It worries me.
Yep.
So I just think he was a little bit too, I have to kick a goal, I have to kick a goal, instead of what's my best option. And setting one up is just as good as kicking one. And he missed a golden opportunity.
I don't believe that you meant that. You've kicked 1,250.
No. I'm telling you right now. Have a look. So here's the one we were talking about. So he gets the hand pass here when the kick off the ground. He picks it up. Have a look at Ed Langdon, right of screen with his arms in the air. A little chip over the top and he runs into an open goal. You can't pass that up.
I think you're right. And what might look simple, and you might argue the point, that ball, if you're a good side that share the ball and really care for your teammates, at least he looks.
He didn't even look, exactly right. Did not even look.
And that for me is a pattern that I've seen also in games this year when players from this side, and we're speaking about specifically Melbourne because it's their game tonight, have thought, where's the goals rather than where is a better option to maybe someone in a better position.
So is it better to look and burn the player or not look at all?
It's better to look and burn the player.
Yeah, look and burn him.
Well, you should be looking to sum up what the best option is. And then if you make the decision, I'll take the kick on, your responsibility, that's okay.
Yep.
But when you don't look and you just go, bang, I'm looking for the goals and nothing else, that's not great play.
Because, Kingy, we know Melbourne's big Achilles heel at the moment is attack. They're not as highly ranked in attack as they are in a lot of other facets of the game. And tonight we saw some examples of poor entry, which certainly isn't going to help that.
No, from their best too. I mean, Christian Petrarca blasted the ball in 3 or 4 times tonight. It's unlike Christian to see him. I mean, this kick here, where is that going? Well, it staggers me to see him. He's all quality. Just blast the ball. And they took 6 marks inside the forward 50. I don't know what their perfect mix is inside forward 50. And I think that's the biggest headache right now for Simon Goodwin.
And they probably don't know what the best mix is either at the moment. And they've tried the extra tall. It hasn't worked, Kingy. And I think maybe that's contributing to the confusion of the players delivering the ball, trying not to be, well, I don't want to just kick everything to Ben Brown, but what are my other options?
So they have to go to Gawn or Jackson?
Well, I think they can certainly play a role up forward, but I think you've got to get back to the players saying, just take that extra step to have a look at what's the best option. Have a look at all the options that are there. Don't just blaze away. Now, I think there's a lot of referred pressure tonight, and sometimes players kicked it a little quicker than perhaps they needed to, and maybe that affected the decision-making, but there was some poor inside 50.
Yeah, you see the Guthrie one. I mean, he's just so composed with the ball, and you can see him scanning the inside 50. Where's the best option? Oh, the best option right now is into the pocket, and he executes quite well. I just think on occasions tonight, and it's been a bit of a trend with Melbourne, they're so quick to get the ball onto their boot because of the perceived pressure.
Not a great night for the reigning premiers, but is it about to get worse as we head into the newsroom with John Ralph? Arguably their best player, Clayton Oliver, looks to have a nasty hand injury. How bad is it?
Yeah, well, the $8 million man, he's certainly going to need scans tomorrow on that. Well, that potentially fractured thumb now, of course, so courageous in coming back onto the field, but to be honest, that doesn't really mean much in terms of the long-term prognosis. He copped this direct hit from Joel Selwood. There's no padding there at the base of the thumb. There's nothing to absorb the blow. The good news, though, is that surgery can mean mean you can miss only a week with a fractured thumb, and there's a couple of examples in the last year. Isaac Heaney early last year only missed a week, and then Dyson Heppel only missed a game against Adelaide, and he was back the previous week. Both of those players played out the game in which, of course, they were injured. Now, the worst case scenario can be the scaphoid. That's at the bottom of the thumb. You need a pin put that into that one, and that can be a 4 to 6 weeker. So clearly, though, the hope would be that if it is that he's fractured his thumb, he might miss next week against Port Adelaide and still be back a long time before the finals. So at Melbourne, the feeling now is the club is losing hope of losing their superstar unicorn, Kingy, as you called it, in Luke Jackson. Fremantle's extremely confident he will get to the club. My understanding is that he's told some friends, I would like to be at Fremantle. Now, certainly he will get home at some stage. It's just whether it's this contract or a subsequent contract down the road. The official word as recently as tonight. There's no decision yet. He's had some talks with the club, of course, as recently as this week. Melbourne Chief Executive Gary Pert tells me today the club has told Jackson and their fellow free agent in Angus Brayshaw there's no ultimatum, there's certainly no timeline that we're pushing you on. He said, we made it clear to Jacko and Gus Brayshaw, we will work with your managers. There is no date or no hurry. No one is putting pressure on them. We'd love to think this is the club that they would like to be at. So if Jackson does leave, it creates real cap space. Max Gawn is still contracted to 2025. There is still some hope at Melbourne, but I think it's a glimmer of hope right now.
What do you think, boys?
It's a bold move, leaving a premiership team and a team that looks like they're going to be at the top for quite a while. Having said that, Freo looks very promising as well. So maybe you go there and help them win there first, but it's still a big move, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, he would be moving back to the state where he grew up, in the town that he grew up, so he's got a lot of family and friends there. I mean, I was pretty bullish initially to say that he'd stay because of the culture and the success and of what he's been a part of, but as it drags on, I'm getting more and more thinking that he might potentially leave.
Does it make a difference whether they win the flag or not this year? Or will the decision be made prior to that?
I think the decision would be made purely for him, not necessarily on the back of success at his current club.
Has he learned all he can learn from Max Gawn, or is there more to come, do you think?
Oh, there's always time to learn. I mean, he's so young in his craft, but I think knowing the kid is a really relaxed customer. So he would make the best decision, I would think, to be around his family if that's what he sees fit, not necessarily a successful sort of period.
All right, watch this space. OK, let's check in with Sportsbet for the latest.
Hope someone else beats them before we have to play them.
Good there from Chris Scott, and it is a great performance by the Cats, but also from the coaching staff. They're going to go to bed tonight. Pretty happy with that one.
I think so. Look, he's always respectful to the opposition. I think he was respectful again. I think he was very stoked with his team's performance, and he said what we've been saying a little bit. It was messy the way they got some of their goals. It wasn't a traditional game tonight, but they found a way to kick them, and that was good enough to get them over the line. And you've got to like their run home. I mean, of all the top teams, that's the best of the runs home.
Well, they're equal top now, so you'd think they're going to get some percentage if they get really serious in the last 2 games of the year, flex their muscles.
That game against Carlton is going to be a ripper at the
It is. I mean, they won 7 in a row, and they could easily win 4, 5 or all 6 of those games.
Look out.
So they're going to be right there.
Do you think that, so their best, them at their best, is it as good as Melbourne's best? We didn't see either team, I don't think, at their best tonight.
I still think Melbourne's best is better than everybody else's. But they haven't quite discovered their best this year. They did for 1 week. That was the game against Brisbane.
Yeah.
They found their best. I mean, even the first 10 weeks, they were just going, but they didn't play any of the other contenders. So they've still got to find their best.
Some great scenes inside the rooms with the 2011 Premiership team and the current crop posing for a bit of a pic there.
There we go.
Stevie J, is that at the back?
4 goals in that grand final series, still talking about him.
Yeah.
One of the all-time greats. James Kelly as well. They were a great side in 2011. That was a really good grand final.
You know you're going to win the grand final, Jason, when 15 seconds in, Travis Varco kicks a goal. You think, we're on here, we're away.
Is that Chris Scott's first year as coach?
First year,
yeah.
There's Travis.
I mean, that's where we sit back and look at Geelong in awe, almost, the way they've managed to stay at the very pointy end of the ladder basically every year.
The best part of 12 years.
Yeah, it's frightening.
So the Cats claim top spot on the ladder, and now it is over to you for the rest of the teams taking on round 17 and trying to keep in the race for September.